Stupidity is not a competition. Unless you're a politician. The Daily Mojo.
Bring in the Phil, if you will. Phil Bell, the Director of External Relations and Affairs and stuff over at FreedomWorks. And hi, Phil. How are you?
I'm good. I gotta say I'm very happy that I haven't lost an airplane lately, but it does remind me something happened in the 90s. There was a railroad, the Wisconsin Central, they lost a locomotive. Now, locomotives will sometimes run onto, or a lot of times run onto other railroads, and they couldn't find this particular one, so they actually put out to rail enthusiasts like me on the internet, they said, hey, if you see it, let us know, because we don't know where it is.
Wow. And okay, so this was in the 90s. Wasn't there anything like a tag or something? I guess we had GPS back then.
Well,
right?
they don't really have that. What you have is called reporting marks, which are letters and numbers that will say, in my case, maybe PLBX, if that identifies my railroad or my company that is the owner. And so periodically you check that to say, okay, PLBX 1234 just went by Fort Worth, Texas. And say, okay, that's where we know it's in that area. So it wasn't really GPS at that point. In some cases it's equipment, but not usually, and certainly not then.
Okay. All right. Didn't we had Garmin's in the 90s, right? When did Garmin's come out?
I think it was late 90s, because I used paper maps right up until like 2009, but I also use a BlackBerry, so you can't put much stock in that.
I loved my BlackBerry. I had a BlackBerry. I loved the keyboards on the BlackBerries were awesome because you could feel them, and I loved my BlackBerry. The problem I had with the BlackBerry was the screen was so tiny that it was like two postage stamps. You couldn't see a damn thing on it. But I still had total respect for BlackBerries.
I got one from 18. The screen's big.
You have a new one?
Yeah, next time I'll show you. It's from 28. Screen's pretty good size. You can watch a video on it, but sadly, most of it's just woke stuff, so you really don't want to.
Right. All right, so I want to. Ron found this on TikTok. Go figure. And then I started watching a little bit of it, and so I'll play a little bit of this C-SPAN video, which is from how long ago was this thing? July 11th. So this is like 2 months later, and we're just now hearing about it. But I'll just play a little so people at least know what we're talking about here.
Especially during COVID-19, 14 NIH officials, including Dr. Fauci, held unlawful positions and exercised authority that they didn't have, which included approving $26 billion in grants. This is unprecedented, and it calls into question the validity of every decision that these officials have made since December 2021 to June 2023.
All right, this is Representative Kathy McMorris Rogers. She is the committee chair of the Energy and Commerce Committee. And what the hell is she talking about, Phil?
So there's two things. First of all, in order to spend the United States' money, you have to be an officer of the United States. So, for example, you look at any government bureaucracy, you see a lot of folks there. We always joke around. We don't really know what they do. They push pencils. The vast majority of them, while they might have respective jobs within their organization, they can't actually spend money. So they can't give out a grant. They can't hand out a loan. They can't do any of that. So that's one. And that's actually something that's been an issue for a long time, is that during the Obama administration, we're not sure. It could have happened during the Trump administration as well. And certainly now under Team Biden, you have had people who are not officers of the United States spending the money, and that is illegal. But the second thing to mention here, and let me get the citation. So Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution, the classification of the National Institutes of Health directors, they are inferior officers. So people like Anthony Fauci and Francis Collins, they are not able to do their job without being appointed by the Secretary of Health and Human Services, who now is Javier Bacerra. What he did not do is reappoint them to their positions. So I know this is a dream scenario where somehow we could erase everything those clowns did, But after 2020 or 2021, when they were supposed to be reappointed by the secretary himself, he did not do it. He delegated that authority, which he is not allowed to do. Therefore, they were not legally appointed and could not serve in their positions. And since they couldn't serve in those positions, they couldn't spend our money, including giving it to, yes, the EcoHealth Alliance. And we all know what the EcoHealth Alliance did, which is sent money to China to engage in research on viruses. And we all know how that turned out.
Okay. All right. So they didn't have the authority to do it, which Ron and I were discussing this prior to the program commencement. We weren't even sure how, like, let's say Johns Hopkins decides they want a grant from the National Institute of Health. They call up the National Institute of Health. Hey, we want a grant. We want $1 million. All right, fine. We'll send you a grant for $1 million. They both hang up. What happens after that? Does somebody at the National Institute of Health sit down, pull out a checkbook, write a check, send it to them? Does somebody go into a program somewhere and electronically transfer $1 million to them? How does that even work? And is that relevant in this situation?
Well, it is. Now, ideally, and we do know this to a certain extent, there is a substantial grants application process that they will go through, even someone who's known like Johns Hopkins or the EcoHealth Alliance or otherwise in order to do that. Then obviously it'll get reviewed. Once it's reviewed, they'll agree. Now, money can be transferred in a variety of ways. So there obviously is a very, robust system of payment cards and so forth that can be used. There's also the electronic, utilize now, FedNow, which we talked about recently, that money could be transferred. So they have that, and they do have the way to account for it. So not necessarily accusing them of not accounting for money properly, although that's to be expected in a bureaucracy of that size. It's just a question of who has the authority. And since they didn't have the authority to sign off and do it, they weren't allowed to actually do that.
All right. So now that we know that they constitutionally were not allowed to do it, what can we do about it?
Well, now, first of all, I
was afraid of that.
Well, first of all, go to FreedomWorks and join Freedom Team.
Yeah.
So this is where it gets to be difficult, because we have something that I consider to be illegal, although some of the lawyers in this audience will probably say that it's appropriate, which is called standing. And we've all heard about standing. Standing is a way that judges arbitrarily decide that people who should be able to bring lawsuits can't. Now, you would have definitely a case if, for example, someone were to steal a box of donuts from you, and I, as just an observer, come along and say, I'm going to sue that person. No, I shouldn't be able to do that. Only you should. You got injured. At the same time, all of us in the United States or taxpayers are injured when our money is illegally spent. So in theory, any of us should be able to go to court and say, they're not allowed to do this. We are suing to have everything they did undone, which they can do. Now, there's certain things that obviously can't be unscrambled. For example, if they gave money to the EcoHealth Alliance sent it to China, and they came up with 5 more viruses, some of which actually were deadly. We can't undo that, but we can at least force them to repay the money back. The question is going to be what judge, what court will be receptive to this, and who will step up and do it. I am more than happy to do it, but let's remember, this is not simply filling out a simple lawsuit form and or affidavit turning it in. It is going to be a very, very long, difficult process that requires the most expensive lawyers to go up against the U.S. government.
Which means essentially that, as many of these comments on the TikTok that Ron originally found says, and nothing will be done as usual. Trucker Tim in Arizona says, tired of talk, let's see action. Candace De La Tour 861 says, I have no faith in our government anymore to do anything about anything. James, accountability is no longer even taught in this country, etc., and so on. Which is irritating, and I feel their pain, because what the hell? I mean, you're right. It's going to take money, stacks and stacks of money to fight this, and who's going to do it?
Well, it absolutely should be done. First of all, you know what? A lot of citizens in this audience, and I might even be one of the people who does it too, should file suit and go and take this on. And the reason why is at the very least, we have to make sure that they know this is going to be a problem. And I'm not just talking about because it's Democrats that we don't like. In this case, it is. But let's also think about things that Republicans have done, like created the TSA and gone along with a lot of unconstitutional BS. They've all done it because they know that we will say, well, I'm tired of this. I don't want to fight it anymore. So to the folks out there that were saying that, don't let that be your posture. But second, we absolutely also have to take the case of the politicians. Now, the funny thing is the politicians passed a law in 2016 that specified how this has to be done, and the administration didn't follow it. So it's good that the House Energy and Commerce Commission took action, but now we need the entire House. So tell your member, whether they're Republican or Democrat, to take action against this. And for those who are Dems, tell them this, that even though they may not like what Republicans are doing, they may not like the Republicans, they may love Joe Biden, they should not have their own power taken away by some other branch of government. That's their power, too. And that's what the loss is being.
So why isn't this all over the mainstream media? I know it should be a rhetorical question, but go ahead. Why isn't this all over the mainstream media?
Well, the obvious reason, number one, is, of course, they like Joe Biden. They like Xavier Bacerra, however you say it. And they love Anthony Fauci and Francis Collins. They all the con artists, they love them. But second, because it's somewhat of a technical issue. There are a lot of folks out there, and this is why the education process is so important. They don't understand that that the U.S. government could have people in there spending money who aren't supposed to. Now, it's not that hard a case to make, though, because think about in all of our jobs, I can't go out and spend money for FreedomWorks. I'd like to, but I can't.
Right.
I've got to ask somebody that has the ability to sign the paper to do that. And it's the same in almost every job. And for those who do have that authority at their company or at the business they run or otherwise, they take that very seriously. So we have an opportunity here on this show and in our movement and the media source aligned with us to do something that hasn't been done, which is make the case to the public and have them listen. So that's why I'm glad you brought this up. And
it really did. It made me wonder. And I realize that the grant process is extensive, and there's a number of check marks they have to get through. But when it comes down to, all right, they're going to get the they're going to get the money, or let's say in the case of Ukraine, Biden steps out. Hey, we're giving another $1 billion to Ukraine. Who gets called at the Pentagon to, all right, load up those 18 tanks out there, put them on that C-130, and Bob, you go fly it and land it over there. And how that process has got to be fairly, I would think, complicated, just so it doesn't happen every day that we're just giving stuff away. But the process by which all this stuff happens has got to be a nightmare.
Well, you're right. And and this is where I'll disagree with you. I don't think it should be complicated. I think it should be simple, but it also should be transparent. We should all, and it should be available to the public. Now, we don't have to necessarily know, or the public doesn't necessarily have to know, how much of, the amounts of each whatever not is being sent, because some of that really could be a security issue. But being able to say, look, we always talk to the deputy loadmaster. The deputy loadmaster finds a plane to load it and does that. And it should be verifiable. It should be able to audit it and replicate the procedure. And if any of that's not shared with the public, then it shouldn't be allowed to happen. That should be a law that gets to pass.
And what you just said about there are things we shouldn't know. I used to feel that way. I used to think that, okay, there are certain things that we, the people, shouldn't know because national security. I don't feel that way anymore because I don't trust these bastards. I don't trust them with anything. And it's sad, but now I want to know everything, which I know isn't possible because they're not going to tell us everything, which then gets me back to point A where I'm just frustrated. So it's kind of a vicious cycle.
I apologize. I'm actually with you on that.
But you're right.
I knew the minute.
In theory, you're right.
Well, when I say the public, what I'm really thinking about are those, because there are a lot of spies and so forth, and like the September 11th hijackers, they were actually here for a reason. Government not keeping track of them was a different story. I don't want them to know. I want to know. You should know. Right. But there should be a way to keep it from those who actually would do harm. The question is, the federal government, of course, looks at all of us as doing harm because harm would be taking away their power, and that's what should happen.
Damn it, Ron. You and your damn TikToks.
It's my fault. Sorry.
Yeah, I know. It's Ron's fault. All right, so give this. I mean, you've pretty much done it, but tell everybody why they need to get over there at to FreedomWorks because holy cow.
You want to rein in out of control spending. You want to make sure your government is accountable to you. The only way they will be is if they know they can't escape you. And the way for them not to escape you is to join up with like-minded patriots, go to freedomworks.org, learn about all the issues, the nuances of it, get educated, and take that message right to them.
Can we count on McCarthy to get behind something like this thing to spank Fauci? Well, I don't know how we spank them anymore, but is McCarthy going to do a damn thing?
If enough of us tell our members to do something about it, then he'll have to. Full stop.
All right. That sounds like a plan to me. Phil, as always, thank you. Appreciate it. And let's get them before they. Yep. Go. Yep.
Well, 1 second before you go. I did it. I got it.
Oh,
Martha
look
Stewart.
at you, dude.
There it is.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
This is going to become a TikTok video right here.
Oh, look at you, man. Look at you.
Very, very nice.
The First Amendment lives here. Watch and listen at thedailymojo.com.